rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events, this is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick Thomas. And I see many of the usuals showing up. Hello, Tommy and Mark over on Facebook. And, of course, I've got to holler out to the Rumble fans, 3 Chevy, Buddy Weiser, Music Man, Amy Jean, I think that's pretty much everybody that I've seen so far, including myself as myself. Anyway, Music Man, hold up there, buddy. I got you. I've been in a scramble, so I don't have a whiskey with me tonight. I wish I did, but unfortunately, when I looked down and realized my cup was gone, I only had about a minute before the video flipped. So that probably wouldn't have looked good for you guys to come up and see just a blank screen with nothing behind it, but that's okay. No worries. Things got away from me this afternoon, and I just haven't been able to do that, but that's okay, because tonight, let me do this real quick. Because tonight, of course, is... seriously? Now you're not going to work? Whiskey Wednesday. It's like Taco Tuesday, but for badasses. And just for those whiskey warriors who remember this.
Down to business.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Yes, that was my original opening when I was back doing the Whiskey Warriors. That's right. So, yep, that was back in the day, quite a while ago, actually. Well, I mean, maybe not that long ago. I think I switched over just a couple of times, but anyway, so, all right. Whew, wow. This has just been today has been kind of a rough day, but anyway. Yeah, Music Man, I think Music Man is like, I need this. So I'm going to figure out a way to incorporate that somehow in terms of the Whiskey Wednesday. So there you go. Just so everybody, I'll see what I can I'll see what I can do. I ran out of time today. I also ran out of time to get a pet of the week queued up. So unfortunately, I don't have that for tonight either. I'm just falling down all over the place. No whiskey, no pet of the week. I'm just falling apart here, man. Yeah, there's not enough time in the day. To be fair and honest, though, it really is kind of my fault, because honestly, I got into a little bit of a discussion on X with regards to Kamala Harris and Kamala Ding Dong and her newest slogan that they're floating out, because now apparently Kamala Harris has decided to use as her election slogan. I can't say re-elect because she's not being reelected for vice president. She's now running for president. But her thing is that we can't go back. And I'm just kind of curious as to what can't we go back to? You're right. We can't go back to the past of, high inflation, 9% inflation. We can't go back to, all of the COVID mandates. What else is there that we are supposed to or not supposed to go back to? And well, what I think she is referencing, and what a lot of the other folks are referencing, is stuff like we can't go back to prior to when women were allowed to vote, or prior to before Roe v. Wade was enacted. All of these things that she is talking about in terms of we can't go back, I think has a lot to do with we can't go back to what they think is the absolute horror that they believe America was once at one time. And that seems to be where the Democrats have taken off for, because I've already seen it and it's coming. I guarantee you it's going to become more mainstream, but I've already seen it. I've already seen somebody pick that up and say, well, we can't go back to when women didn't have rights, because we can't go back to not having less rights than a man has, and so on and so forth. And it was something like that that triggered me in such a way that I basically had to ask, well, in today's world, what rights does a man have that a woman doesn't? And of course, you know, as any leftist who posts that on their social medias, the first thing that comes out of their mouth, well, we don't have the right to medical care. Again, what right? What right do you have, or that you don't have, that a man has? Well, we don't have the right to reproductive rights, you know, to choose when we get pregnant and when we don't. I'm confused. How has that changed? You can still decide to have intercourse. You can still decide to get pregnant. There's still prescription and non-prescription methods to keep you from getting pregnant or getting you pregnant. Either way, confused here as to what right you still have the right to sleep with whoever you want. You still have that right. I just don't understand these people's logic. And the other thing that I'm seeing, which of course I knew this was coming because, you know, gosh forbid, I was actually wrong. Believe it or not, I was actually wrong back in 2008, I think it was. Yeah, because 2016, no, that would have been 8 years. So 2008. So that would have been 2012. I was wrong in 2012. Stephen Stiles and I were talking about, you know, the preeminent potential reelection of Barack Obama. And I basically said, yeah, I don't think that that America is going to want him again. And I was wrong. And back in 2008, I said, I don't think America is going to bow down or choose this particular man, as the first black president of the United States, because he had literally no resume. He had nothing other than being a community organizer. And in the words of Joe Biden, he was the first eloquent, well-dressed black man. So, yeah, they are recycling that whole thing again, where they're trying to get people to vote for her just because she is a black, reportedly, I'll call her just a person of color and a woman. So anyway, I'm getting off topic. I'm getting into the show. And of course I'm being reminded that I need to do the pledge. So let me go ahead and do that. Tonight, it is Judge Wild who is leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So please, if you are of mine, stand, remove your hats, put your hand over your hearts, and follow with Judge Wild along in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. And I thank Judge Wild and all of my folks who have submitted their versions of the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to hear your version of the Pledge of Allegiance, it's really easy. All you have to do is record yourself doing it, and then, of course, send me the audio file. You can email that to me at fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans at AmericanPerspective.online. Now, I'm seeing some comments about Joe Biden's address. So let's take a quick jaunt over to him, and let's take a moment to listen to this geriatric.
Is that we hold these truths to be self-evident. We're all created equal, endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We've never fully lived up to it, to this sacred idea, but we've never walked away from it either. And I do not believe the American people will walk away from it now. In just a few months, the American people will choose the course of America's future. I made my choice. I've made my views known. I would like to thank our great Vice President, Kamala Harris. She's experienced, she's tough, she's capable. She's been an incredible partner to me and a leader for our country. Now the choice is up to you, the American people. When you make that choice, remember the words of Benjamin Franklin hanging on my wall here in the Oval Office, alongside the busts of Dr. King and Rosa Parks and Cesar Chavez. When Ben Franklin was asked, as he emerged from the convention going on, whether the founders have given America a monarchy or republic, Franklin's response was, a republic, if you can keep it. A republic, if you can keep it.
Okay, he's already lying. Oh, God, just horrible, horrible stuff. First of all, I'm actually kind of surprised, to be honest with you, that he got through the idea of the creator, because, the thing. But he's not talking about, whatever. I'm done. He can just go away. All right. So the coalition is already starting to show some cracks in the Kamala Harris piece of thing, or the Kamala Harris coalition to support Kamala Harris. It's already starting to show some cracks. I mean, I'm kind of interested to see where this is going to go. This is in the Daily Caller. Black Lives Matter demands that DNC host an immediate primary to protest the anointing of Kamala Harris. And that is exactly what they did, folks. That is what they are doing. She apparently, again, has the, and yes, buddy, he did actually say Cesar Chavez, which if I were in the Oval Office, that would be the first thing that would go. I'd be throwing that thing out. In fact, I'd probably do it on national television and just get rid of it. Anyway, going back to what I was saying. So this doesn't bode well. I mean, let's just face it. Black Lives Matter, it was an organization that wasn't necessarily what it purported to be, and built by large mansions and all that stuff came out of it because of the fact that's sort of what ended up happening. But the overall point out of all this is the fact that they point out exactly with what the problem is with this entire situation. Is that she is essentially anointed. She is the anointed one. She has been given the scepter of invincibility in the Democrats or whatever. So anyway, they posted on X, and I actually saw the post, but they posted publicly on X essentially a long timeline of the events. And if you're watching on Rumble or any of my other video outlets, you can see where this is at. But Black Lives Matter posted on X this timeline of all the events, and then they essentially call for the Rules Committee to create a process that allows for public participation in the nomination process, not just a nomination by party delegates. The current political landscape is unprecedented, with President Biden stepping aside in a manner never seen before. That's not actually true. It was done in 1924 and then again in 1968. This moment calls for decisive action to protect the integrity of our democracy and the voices of black voters. Well, okay, democracy, yeah. Now, the other thing that has come about in especially within the Democrat higher up circles, is they keep talking about how Kamala Harris earned the right to be president, which is a bunch of bullshit. Straight up, it's bullshit. She did not earn that right. She was chosen by Joe Biden for two reasons. One, he initially said he was going to nominate a female. And then as he narrowed down the list, he clearly called out that there were 4 black or persons of color for that position. And so he literally nominated her because of her skin color and her gender, not necessarily in that order. That's a DEI hire if I've ever heard one. So, yeah. And yes, Joe did look orange, 3 Chevy. Joe did look quite orange, although I've noticed he's been doing that a lot lately because he doesn't want to show how pale he is. But anyway, so this doesn't bode well. I mean, for all of the people who say that, you know, she's going to garner and lock up what is considered to be the black vote. Yeah, I have my doubts, especially when your biggest, you know, public Black Lives Matter out there is out there. So, and yes, Pikarik over on Rumble points this out. She did support the violence from BLM. In fact, she supported bailing the rioters who had done crimes during the riots and stuff. She actually supported getting them out of jail. So yeah, that's yeah. So there you go. Well, it's even worse than what you think in terms of where this potentially could go. You know, again, as I pointed out a while ago, they had a virtual convention spooled up to make sure that Joe Biden would actually get on the Ohio ballot. That still, to this day, hasn't changed. And in fact, this report out in Breitbart is saying that the DNC is going to, and this is their terminology, not necessarily mine, okay, coronate Harris weeks before the convention via some sort of a rule change. Now, supposedly, according to the report, the Democrat Party is going to change the rules and coronate Vice President Kamala Harris as its nominee the first week in August. Now, just for those that may not have a calendar right in front of them, that could be as early as 2 weeks from today or less than 2 weeks from today, depending on when it's done. Oh, they're supposed to assemble today to change the roll call rules to allow Harris to accept the party's nomination before it reaches the convention in Chicago, according to Bloomberg. Bloomberg said the idea of a virtual roll call emerged in May in order to make sure the Democrat ticket would have time to get on the ballot in several states with early filing deadlines, party leaders said. Yeah, that's the whole Ohio thing. So then it goes on. The convention's rules committee meets to finalize the process Wednesday. The last remaining obstacle is holding the vote. It was Ohio's August 7th deadline that prompted the rule change. Even though the state pushed back its date to September 1st, it's unclear whether the old deadline still applies to the 2024 election. The early nominations vote, which could take place as soon as August 1st, will provide added urgency for Harris to select a running mate beforehand. While party leaders have not committed to a deadline for the vice presidential nomination, Ohio law requires the party to certify in writing the names of both the presidential and vice presidential candidates to appear on the ballot. So in other words, Ohio, where J.D. Vance is from, just not saying there's any kind of correlation there at all, but Ohio is essentially putting the monkey in the wrench with this entire situation. So yeah. Yep. Yeah, yeah. And it even goes on, the piece goes on and talks about that, Barack Obama played a significant role in it, that they potentially threatened the 25th Amendment to force him out of office, which implies collusion with Kamala Harris. So, yeah, folks, I'm telling you, these people will do anything that they think they should in order to try and win, because of the fact that Joe Biden was failing miserably against good old Joe. Scranton Joe kid, that Scranton Joe, fighting Scranton Joe, whatever. Yeah, he's not fighting much anymore. He's given up. And the media seem to be helping out Kamala Harris. Now, why do I say that? Because the left-wing media, which all the mainstream media is, for the most part, is left-wing people. That's just the way it is. Just accept it. But the left-wing media has already started cleaning stuff up. For an example, the left has decided that you cannot call Kamala Harris the border czar anymore. Even though back in April of 2021, one of their left-wing sources, Axios, which is a staunch left-wing propaganda outlet, clearly put out a article that stated that she was the border czar. Now, Axios has since cleaned up that article with an editor's note saying that they were wrong in calling her that. But the funny thing about it is that Axios isn't the only one that picked that up. There are several others in the mainstream media ethosphere that picked all of that up and have been calling her the border czar for quite some time. And she reportedly, according to some sources, they're like, no. Joe didn't give her complete control of the border. Joe just said that she needed to find out what the sources of migration were. That was it. Yeah. And so the spin is already hit. The DNC media machine is already in. They have already started. Now, I was lucky enough to get a hold of the original article and have it where it was highlighted and circled. I grabbed it off of X. But the fact of the matter is that that's what they are going to go with, is they're going to say, no. She wasn't the border czar. She wasn't in charge of the border. They're going to try and distance her from the immigration border catastrophe that has been going on, that has caused several people to lose their lives, has caused several people to have drug overdoses, has caused the entire country to actually lose jobs for Americans. I've pointed that out on this program many times before. And so it just doesn't make any kind of sense whatsoever as to why they are trying to distance her from that, other than they are trying to make it so that she doesn't get saddled with the same stuff that Joe Biden has been saddled with. Well, I'm sorry, folks, but she was the border czar. She was in charge of the border. She never talked to any of the Border Patrol chiefs. In fact, as I pointed out in the last couple of episodes. So, yeah, she is working on trying to get herself out from under the specter that was Joe Biden. Well, this came out, and I'm kind of surprised that they actually acted on this, even though I'm not really surprised that it's not going to go anywhere. I'm telling you right now. But here in the National Pulse, impeachment articles have been filed against Kamala for mismanaging the border and for also covering up Biden's decline. Now, this is an interesting angle. The whole covering up for Biden's decline angle. I don't know necessarily how Well, I mean, I guess, yeah, I'm not exactly sure where they're going to go with that, but that would be very interesting to see. But Representative Andy Ogles, who is from Tennessee, a Republican, has introduced articles of impeachment against Vice President Kamala Harris, accusing her of high crimes and misdemeanors regarding the southern border crisis and the concealment of Joe Biden's cognitive decline. Biden appointed Harris border czar in early 2021, which, like I was telling you, that's what happened. But again, keeping in mind that the whole covering up Biden's decline isn't necessarily a high crime, as 3 Chevy points out right here. I don't know if I'd necessarily call that a high crime. I'm a little worried about where that would go, but yeah, I mean, we all know that it's not going to go anywhere once it gets, even if it does pass in the House of Representatives, which would be highly likely that it would pass there. When it goes over to the Senate, all Chucky Schumer's going to do is sit on the damn thing. Now, I don't know if anybody saw his press junket that he did, where he was announcing his support for Kamala Harris, but he essentially went and said, hey, you know, Kamala Harris, yay, and he goes and claps, and expecting everybody else to clap. Well, the whole freaking place was silent. And it was almost a Joe Biden clap for that, you stupid bastards moment. He was like, well, I'm going to clap. You don't have to clap, but I'm going to clap. Yeah, these guys, they just don't seem to understand. Like I explained, you know, she is a very unlikable character. And she doesn't get any better with any of her press junkets either. She hasn't gotten any better, and that's part of the reason why she was hidden for so damn long, not doing anything, because people were making fun of her circular, illogical statements about time and buses and freaking Venn diagrams and all of these other things. Well, after being named the heir successor, or the heir apparent, I should say, she demonstrates her lack of understanding international politics. To be fair, a bunch of Democrats all did the same thing because they're freaking stupid. But that being said, she, as the heir apparent to the Democrat presidential throne, she should have been there. Also, let's not even point out that she's also the president of the Senate, and she should have been there also. But here, Harris boycotts the Netanyahu speech to Congress. She boycotted it. And so did my wonderful and esteemed senator moron called Patty Murray. She, as the Senate president pro tempe or tempore or whatever they freaking call it, because it's freaking Latin, she gave it up too. So she's technically the person in line for the presidency, which when I realized that and found that out, I was like, holy crap, that's freaking scary. But anyway, she also passed the buck. And of course, Rashida Tlaib sat in the gallery with a freaking paddle sign saying war criminal on it, and then something else on the back I didn't even bother to see. But she, you know, Rashida Tlaib is like full of all kinds of class anyway. But yeah, so VP, the current VP and potential presidential nominee, has gone and went and addressed the Zeta Phi Beta sorority in Indianapolis instead of Netanyahu. Now, the Harris campaign, of course, says, no, we didn't do this on purpose. We didn't expect to have to be there, for the speech. She didn't expect that she was going to have to be there. So she, went and arranged this. This was scheduled a long time ago. So they're blaming scheduling conflicts. But let's be honest. Let's be honest here. I think listening to a ally speech in our guest speaker in our congressional building would be a reason to maybe reschedule the Zeta Phi Beta sorority conversation. I don't know. Anyway, I just don't, she's already failed on the international stage, not to mention the fact that she doesn't really have much of an international presence anyway, because of course she was supposed to go down to South America and figure out, based on the border policies and things like that, find out what happened. Why do people migrate? Why do people migrate? Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm just so I'm already tired of her, and she's not even been nominated as the Democrat nominee yet. I'm already tired of it. But hey, there's this article in Town Hall, this is true. Okay, this is really, really true. We've got to, even though we're tired of her, even though we know about her, we can't overlook the possibility that there are a lot of things that can come about between now and election day that could possibly affect this entire election. One of them, a couple of them I've already pointed out. One is that she has been a staunch supporter of women's quote unquote rights in terms of abortion. And she's been very, very open, very public with her support for getting Roe v. Wade reinstated, even though it can't, because the Dobbs decision basically killed anything in the federal world. But she essentially has some serious things that Republicans should take a look at. And this piece in the Town Hall kind of covers it here. And it basically says, don't overthink it, Republicans. The case against Kamala Harris is straightforward. And the case against Kamala Harris boils down to essentially all of her left-wing policies. For an example, and I'm just going to read some of these listings. She's on record, by the way, of being in favor of defunding the police, empowering criminals, ending private health insurance, and turning us into the Bernie Sanders idea of universal health care, forcing taxpayers to fund illegal immigrant health care plans, decriminalizing illegal immigration, because again, that's one of her major things. She wants to get rid of the Senate filibuster in order to pass her some new $93 trillion Green New Deal is what they claim. And believe me, we're already almost $35 trillion in the hole. And I'm not exactly sure that's going to work. She wants taxpayers to fund elective abortions throughout all 9 months of pregnancy, according to this piece. She's demanded a conversation about whether terrorists like the Boston Marathon bomber should actually have the right to vote. And she is completely far to Biden's left. This is where she needs to get attacked. This is where we need to make sure that a lot of people understand. She is nowhere close to being the moderate, and she cannot even defend her record to be considered a moderate like Joe Biden potentially could. Joe Biden ran in 2020 as being the moderate option to Donald Trump, and he instead took a quick left turn and ended up in the far left field, but not as far as where Kamala Harris actually is. And it's this that that I think we need to, as far as Republicans, I'm hoping that that's what they do. She's also more openly hostile to Israel which is exactly, hello, she just brushed off Netanyahu. I wonder why. She did. Had nothing to do with that Phi, Beta, Kappa, Gamma, Theta, Alpha, Phi, whatever frickin', sorority speech was. That was a bunch of bull crap. And then, of course, we need to basically talk about her failure on the border. That actually, I think, is going to be her biggest Achilles heel. Outside of the fact that she, funded for, criminals to get out of jail quicker and funded their bails and all that other stuff. And that's all a matter of public record too, by the way. So, yeah, we just need to start hitting her on her far left policies, completely far left policies for that. Well, Trump has decided, so we're going to switch from Kamala, sort of. We're going to switch from Kamala over to Trump. Trump has decided to actually take the lawfare back to the Democrats. This came out, and I actually think this, if it even goes anywhere, I really think this is kind of a stroke of genius, to be honest with you. But here in just the news, Trump files an FEC complaint over Biden transferring the campaign war chest to Kamala Harris. The complaint attempts to block Harris from accessing the war chest and comes after Biden's campaign account changed its name to Harris for President on Monday. The money would be on top of the over $80 million Harris had supposedly raised by Monday. So he filed the complaint after Biden withdrew and changed the name. And he, in the filing, according to The Hill, it says Kamala Harris is seeking to perpetuate a $91.5 million heist of Joe Biden's leftover campaign cash, a brazen money grab that would constitute the single largest excessive contribution and biggest violation in the history of the Federal Election Campaign Act of 1971. And this is from Trump campaign counsel David Warrington. The filing requests criminal investigation into the effort, claiming that renaming the campaign and sending the money to Harris is a form of fraud. Now, most people, of course, are skeptical of this argument because of the fact that Harris's name was actually on the original ticket. And I've kind of talked about that, where that is one of the only ways that she could potentially tap into this. But we'll see where this goes. Yeah, we'll see where this goes. So apparently as a part of the filing, also, according to The Guardian, Biden for President 2024 has shown no intention to properly refund or redesignate the general election funds it has already received. This makes them all excess contributions. If Mr. Biden will not seek the Democrat Party's nomination, then he will never participate in the general election, and all general election contributions received by Biden for president are excessive and must be disposed of. Well, that's kind of an interesting take. So they're basically claiming in this complaint to the FEC that this money that came in was actually for the general election and that it was not for a primary. Considering the fact that she hasn't technically been named and hasn't gone through the primary process, that might have a bit of an angle. I'm kind of thinking out loud here on the air, but that actually might have a bit of it's somewhat of a valid argument, even if it's even if it's just a small amount of an argument. I don't know. I honestly don't think it's going to go anywhere. I think this is just, all bluster. But it certainly is an interesting conversation, of course, to have. Yeah. So let's just see what happens with this. Like I said, I don't exactly think this is going to be like a huge splash in the pond to get her to not have that money. And besides, she's already raised reportedly over 100 million on her own anyway, reportedly. So they may just like, yeah, who cares? And not even worry about it, but whatever. All right. So one of the things that has come out and has been, completely apparent about the Trump attempted assassination was the resignation of Cheadle and the naming of her underling, the deputy director of the Secret Service. And that person apparently, at least according to Dan Bongino, who has infinitely more knowledge on that than I do, he is also responsible for this whole thing, which essentially means that the entire upper echelon of the Secret Service heads should probably roll for this. But apparently, the Secret Service has told Trump that they are going to have a difficult time protecting him at outdoor rallies. And that those outdoor rallies, they need him to stop holding outdoor rallies as part of his campaign. Now, this came out, and I've heard it a couple different places, but this came out, at least for me, in the Washington Examiner. Former President Donald Trump has said that he will stop holding outdoor rallies as part of his presidential campaign. The decision comes almost 2 weeks after Trump was nearly killed during an assassination attempt on July 13th at an outdoor rally this month in Butler, Pennsylvania. Two sources familiar with the operations of Trump's campaign acknowledged the former president's plan to shift to indoor venues, NBC News reported. Trump has repeatedly held rallies at outdoor venues that hosted thousands of attendees. Security concerns, however, have necessitated the move to go to indoors. So here's part of the problem that you have with this. One is that outdoor venues can attract thousands to potentially hundreds of thousands of people. Because let's face it, you can hear sounds quite a long ways away. You don't necessarily have to be sitting actually inside the gated area, okay, in order for this to occur. Now, the campaign's pivot came, of course, came actually on the same day that Kimberly Cheadle decided to resign. And it also came after the Secret Service expressed safety concerns over Trump's outdoor events. Now, this is, again, keep in mind, outdoor events are really hard because if you get somebody who actually is a trained sniper, not just a 20-year-old kid with an AR-15 who is potentially looking at just a mass casualty event and not necessarily targeting the president, although it ended up falling in his lap. At least that seems to be the way that the narrative seems to be going at this point. But if he were to hold outdoor rally events, and you get a trained sniper from someone who is, say, a foreign state actor, that could be a bit of a problem. And so, yes, you could have some serious issues with the outdoor venues. And it is much easier to secure inside of a building because of the fact, obviously, you have the four walls and the roof, which protect line of sight lines from enemy snipers. And it is much easier to secure things indoors. The challenge that you have, though, unfortunately, with indoor venues is depending upon the size of the venue, you have limits like fire marshal, fire codes, occupation codes, things like that. And so he may not necessarily be able to draw the same amount of crowds that he normally would in an outdoor kind of space. That being said, I think that this Dan Bongino doesn't think it's really, he didn't really specify one way or the other when he was talking about this on his show earlier today. But at the same time, though, I think it may not be a bad idea to at least do that because let's face it, the Secret Service, or, well, let's be honest, the DHS agents that are assigned to Donald Trump are not that well trained. Let's just put it that way. All right. So the Washington Post also mentioned that representatives from both the Trump campaign and the Secret Service declined to comment on these changes. So yeah, we'll just have to see. So they're going to have to take a look at what they're doing for the presidential run and what indoor venues they're going to be looking at. So we'll just have to see. We'll just have to see. All right, so let's get down to some brass tacks. We've had a couple of days now since Harris was reportedly named to the ticket. Keep in mind, though, even though she claims that she has all the delegates, until she's actually nominated, anything could be up in the air. We'll just have to see. But the thing about it is, though, is that we have to kind of get down to brass tacks. Now, I've already said, and I've made comments a couple of different times about this, in terms of the potential where, Kamala Harris could realistically, believe it or not, win this thing. Even though those of us on the right all talk about how she is just a horrible candidate and so on and so forth, there are those crazy lunatics out there who really don't give a shit whether or not she is qualified for the job, but they just decide that it's going to be essentially just because she is a woman and a person of color, we need to vote for her. We need to put her into the office, even though she has the IQ likely of a gnat. I've already gone through this with her speeches and the things that she talks about in terms of the passage of time and et cetera, et cetera. Well, anyway. So the entire point being here is that let's take a little bit closer look at the current electoral map. So I've gone through and I've done several different options on this. And you can see as of right now, this is where it sort of stands, at least generally speaking, from most of the polling data, most of the positional data. Most people think that, of course, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia are still sitting in the toss-up category. And I would tend to say that, yeah, that's probably fairly true. And of course, keep in mind that this map, the way that I've got it set up right now, is actually set based off of a modeling that is Decision Desk. So Decision Desk, I think it's Decision Desk. I'm not even sure if it's decisiondesk.com or not, but one of the best pollsters in the business, his name is Rich Barris. He runs People's Pundit. And you can go and check it out, peoplespundit.locals.com. That's his address. That's the best way to get a hold of him, or best way to get a hold of his information. And he runs a Rumble account too, but he is one of the more accurate pollsters that is out there. And he pretty much has pointed out that Decision Desk at this point seems to be the most accurate at the moment with regards to the change between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They have decided to freeze. Their modeling, their computer modeling, until some more information comes in, or better yet, they actually do state that they will wait until the presumptive nominee is actually named. And so their computer modeling at this point now is that there is potential, okay, of certain things that could definitely change. Now, Rich Barris went through several different options today, both on his show as well as on Sean Parnell's Battleground Live. But one of the things that I wanted to point out here is that even though you have Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia all in play, okay, there is a Real Clear Politics, and keep in mind, Real Clear Politics takes a look at polling across the board. They've got several that they put in, and most of these polls have come out since Biden stepped out. And that doesn't, I don't necessarily say that that means that he essentially stepped out before the poll was taken. I don't know that 100%, but these are the dates that they have listed here. And as you can see, if you look on the screen behind me here, we've got several of them in the Trump column. We've got a couple that are in ties, and we've got a couple that are leaning toward Harris. But the point that I want to make is overall, at the moment, overall, the general presidential election, Trump versus Harris, has essentially got Trump at a 1.7, a plus 1.7. So in this particular case, it looks like Trump is leading, and we can be honest and say that, yes, Trump has the advantage in all of this. But one of the things that I wanted to clearly point out, too, is that many of the battleground states have actually been polled. For an example, this one is a Pennsylvania Trump versus Harris poll that came out, and it looks like all of the dates, well, some of the dates on this are before Biden bowed out, but it is holding Trump at a +4 over Harris right now. So let's go back to our map and let's take and say, okay, let's assume at this point that that poll is generally correct. And keep in mind, most pollsters actually underrated Trump's ability to come. Okay. So right here, we add Pennsylvania in the mix. Okay. As a likely leaning red or taken by Trump. Okay. So you have that as a potential victory for Trump. So now let's go back to that Real Clear Politics again. And they also pulled out Georgia. And Georgia, they've polled. And again, a couple of these polls were prior to Biden stepping out, but it refers directly to Harris. The Real Clear polling average in Georgia is showing Trump at a +5.4. So being +5, he's ahead in a lot of the polls. Now, a couple of these polls are at like +1. One is at +10, which I think is a little skewed. But still, the point being is that in generalities, when you look at these things, you're looking at a lot of high numbers. So we'll go ahead and we will add Georgia into the column for the Republicans. Well, if Trump can just wrangle Pennsylvania and Georgia by itself, okay, without changing anything else on the map, based off of the data that's available, if he can just pick up Pennsylvania and Georgia, he reaches 270. Okay. This is a serious problem for the Democrats. And this is assuming, of course, that Kamala Harris can actually hold onto these other states. And there is some question that she is doing so. Even now, there's some question. Like, for an example, there were a couple people that noticed that Virginia is actually no longer sitting in the light blue column. It actually is turning more of a light pink. So it's leaning toward going Republican. We also have some evidence that is indicating that New Hampshire might be actually in the toss-up category rather than being in the Democrat camp for certain. We also have some other indications that is showing, because of the fact that, and this is kind of stealing from Rich Barris, but we also have some information that is coming in that very well could be that Arizona, for an example, because of the large numbers of white retirees, sorry, just got to put that out there, white retirees there, and also because of the fact that there is a large Hispanic vote, which doesn't seem to poll very well for Harris, that Arizona might possibly go into the Republican category. And the other piece that is running in play, which this is the exact same kind of scenario, which is the fact that Nevada very well could run in the Republican space as well. Well, if that happens, obviously that completely crushes the Democrats' idea of what they have going on. Now, there are some suggestions that Michigan and Wisconsin are potentially in play for the Republicans, even though traditionally Michigan has not run for Republicans in the past. So even if Michigan stays where it is, and I'll give it a leaning Democrat, and Wisconsin picks up as also leaning Democrat, all Trump really has to do, based on the numbers that we currently see today in the polling, all Trump has to do is pick up Pennsylvania and Georgia, and he's locked it. Anything less than that, and it's pretty much, anything over that, I'm sorry, and it's pretty much over for the Democrats. So we're starting to look and see that there's things out there that are making stuff change. And there's actually even some conversations with regards to Minnesota as well, because in the Rust Belt states, these areas that are in this space here up in the top, these guys are all pretty much, for the most part, kind of white working class voters. And as we've discussed on this program before, that Trump has actually wrangled a lot of those voters. You know, the ones that are like the typically would have been the diehard Union Democrats. Well, I'm not exactly sure that the Democrats are doing so well in some of that, in that particular scenario. And there's also some suggestion too, as you'll notice right over here on the left coast, and I did say that specifically, the left coast, Washington, Oregon, and California, that Oregon is actually getting less likely to be potentially Republican or potentially Democrat, as well as the possibility I've heard too that Washington might actually be lightening up a little bit when it comes to things like the Democrats themselves. That would be interesting to see if things start shifting in terms of where things are going to go. And again, keep in mind that even right now, based on this map, and of course, assuming that Georgia and Pennsylvania are, as far as that Georgia itself goes to Republicans, which at this moment right now against Kamala Harris, Kamala isn't polling very well with the black vote down there in Georgia, at least at this time. And so you can kind of start to see that there is not very many paths for the left to actually get to 270, even though they've switched their horses midstream to try and get things going. And of course, we also have to keep in mind too that the more she speaks, the more likely she is going to reveal herself, and Kamala Ding Dong will show up, and she will be speaking all kinds of words that she has no idea of where she's going in her whole circular, illogical path to try and demonstrate that she is smart, and she's not. So we'll just kind of have to keep an eye on some of this. Now, that's all of this, by the way. I don't want to make the impression that I am basically saying we need to take our foot off the gas. We don't. We still need to make sure that we as in conservatives, Republicans, constitutionalists, etc. We all need to coalesce, and we need to go forward and fight with these people. And by fight, I mean fight them at the ballot box. We need to make sure that we get people out to vote. We need to invigorate the vote, because I guarantee you right now that one of the biggest things that's going to happen is, and I can almost guarantee you that one of their campaign strategies is going to be to ensure that we as Republicans need to understand too that Democrats are going to push the idea that, hey, it's time. It's time. We got cheated in 2016 from having a woman president. I mean, never mind the fact that Hillary Clinton was actually a garbage person and a garbage candidate, but whatever. We got cheated. We need to have a woman president. Let's make it historic. Let's make it a historic situation. Let's make this a historic event, and let's vote. Let's vote for Kamala Harris, the first woman black president. Yeah. Well, I know that voting in a VP or voting for a VP. Oh, and yes, keep in mind, I mean, Trump has so many different combinations that he can go with in order to win. And the reason being, of course, that he is listed right now as having, even with the toss-up states, he's already at 235 expected electoral votes. So there is a challenge with a lot of what's going on in terms of the Dems. And that's actually, believe it or not, that's actually the reason why Joe Biden got kicked out. I mean, let's make this no mistake. This wasn't Joe Biden falling on his sword. This wasn't Joe Biden, doing this for the country. This wasn't Joe Biden thinking that Kamala Harris is actually the best course for the country, although he probably does, because she's, far left of him and he likes that. But the fact of the matter is that as it stands right now, unless something major happens between now and then, as long as we can keep hammering her on, or better yet, let her kind of implode herself like she did, or like Joe Biden did, we can end up with a situation where, we could be looking at something similar to what we saw in 1984 with Ronald Reagan. But the only way for us to make that happen is to make sure that we get the word out. We've got to get out and talk to people. We have to get out to make absolutely certain that we get enough votes out there to make sure and make certain that it is literally too big to rig. Now, toward that end, I do want to point out that there have been a couple of polls, as I pointed out in the Real Clear Politics lineup. There was this Reuters Ipsos poll that showed up that came out and said that that Harris leads Trump 44 to 42%. Now, this is not necessarily my idea, all right, but it's certainly something that did cross my mind. You need to understand, folks, that if they are planning to rig the elections, okay, the same way or something similar to what they might have done in 2020, okay, what I think is going to happen is you're going to see these polls start to tighten up. For an example, some of these polls that are at like the +6 and +3s for Trump are going to start to narrow. and they're going to get closer. The reason being, of course, is that these polls, they have to get the polls close. Because the problem that they had in 2016, in particular, with Hillary, was that they leaned the polls. They manipulated the polling data to show you that there was absolutely no way that Trump was going to win in 2016. There is no way Hillary Clinton has a 94% chance of winning the presidential election. And then the election happened. And we saw a big change in the results where Donald Trump was winning and winning and winning. And the reason being is that the Democrats put all their faith in the mainstream media and trying to push the narrative that, oh, yes, it's time. We need a woman president, and Hillary is her. I'm with her. Just because she is a certain gender, never mind the fact that she was total and disgraceful candidate and just an absolute horrible person. I mean, beyond that. But I see that as the tack that they are going to be taking for this. So don't be surprised over the course of the next few months that you start seeing things like has already been starting to come out. That, first of all, if you attack Harris for being a woman, you're a misogynist. If you attack Harris for not having children of her own, because that's already been kind of tossed out there, that you are a misogynist and a bigot. If you attack her because she is black or not black or whatever, you're going to be called a racist. Never mind the fact that when you call her out on her specific lack of ability, skills, intelligence, and so on and so forth. That's what they are going to sit there and try to tell you throughout the course of the next several months. And of course, the other thing too is that this is the other thing that the left seems to be pushing is that, oh, this is the prosecutor against the convicted felon. That's another tact that you're going to see. All of these things, of course, are trying to lead to a situation where Harris is going to potentially get a bump in the polling and so on and so forth. But yeah. I'm also seeing too on the socials where people, and this one I really don't understand. And I've even said this multiple times. This one I really don't understand. And it's probably a bunch of bots, to be honest with you. But they stand and they say, I'm 64. I'm white. I'm a woman. And I am voting for Kamala Harris. Yeah. And it's not only just women, it's actually men too. There's men on there that are putting it all out on the socials. And I got to tell you, it's freaking crazy how anyone can sit here and just say, hey, I'm going to vote for somebody just because they check certain intersectionality boxes on some form somewhere and just completely ignore the fact that they have literally no experience, no skills, no lack intelligence, and so on and so forth. Yeah. I just don't see it. I don't understand where these people are going to be coming from, but I guarantee you, those are the same people, the exact same people who back in 2008 and again in 2012, who all said, literally, we have to vote for him. It's historic. We've got to give Barack Obama the chance. We've got to give Barack Obama the chance in order to become the historically first black president of the United States. I'm guarantee you they're going to be looking at that as well. And that's going to be attacked in their arsenal. too. So, oh, but yeah, I keep pointing out that only Democrats will, or only morons will vote Democrats on the socials. And I also still am waiting for a response from somebody who can tell me that what rights a man has that a woman doesn't in America today. Literally, that is like got to be that's got to be one of the dumbest arguments I think I've ever heard. Anyway. All right. Well, let me shift gears here just really quick to the economy slightly. This article came out, and of course I think it's just a pinnacle. Let's call it the cherry on the top of the ice cream for our economy. Mainly just because of the fact that, you know, Joe and his, well, now Kamala, which by the way, I've heard that the same people who were running Joe's campaign have now switched over to Kamala's campaign. Apparently she's picked them up. So we'll see how that goes and how effective that is. But the thing about it is here, we show in Breitbart, U.S. home sales have hit a 13-year low as prices soar to record highs. So I was telling you not too long ago, talking to you about the housing crisis that we have, that we're actually already behind. We've been behind for quite some time in the housing market. And it has been extremely tough for people and several people, including myself, who have been locked in really good mortgage rates, have essentially been stagnant and staying in place. And so the housing market itself, even just with existing homes, not counting any new homes, because of course new home sales have slowed because of the high inflation rates and so on and so forth, and new home building is essentially dropping because of the inflation and how much things cost. All of that has tied into a plunge to one of the lowest levels seen since 2010. As would-be sellers held out for better mortgage rates and buyers flinched at sky-high prices. So sales, according to this article, sales of previously owned homes have fallen 5.4% from May, dropping to an annualized rate of 3.89 million. According to data released Tuesday by the National Association of Realtors. This marks the fourth consecutive monthly decline. Economists had forecasted an annualized rate of around 4 million in sales. This was lower than even the most pessimistic forecasts. So the slowdown comes amid surging prices, with the median sales price hitting a new record of $426,900, which was up in June. Okay. Up by 4.1%. Prices are climbing even though more homes have entered the market recently, though the inventory itself remains historically low. In June, there were 1.32 million homes for sale, the highest since October of 2020, but still far below the 1.9 million listed before the pandemic in June of 2019. As at the current sales rate, it would take 4.1 months to sell all of the available homes, which is the longest duration that they've educated in 4 years. Now, NAR believes that prices are unlikely to keep climbing as rapidly as they are going forward due to an increase in supply. But the biggest problem I think that's going to happen, and this is like stepping out from the article really quick, But what I think the biggest problem that's going to be driving all of this, of course, has a lot to do with interest rates. And as of right now, the interest rates seem like they're going to be hanging right around, 5 to 7% as the base rate. I can't remember what it is exactly, but I know it still hasn't really dropped from like 5. But essentially what has ended up, we're looking at high interest still, high inflation, low supply, and what is apparently going to be a fairly low demand, because nobody's going to want to have these things and get themselves into high interest rate loans. So yeah, I can just I can just see what happens. All right, it looks like my chatters have decided to like break ranks and are talking about all kinds of crazy stuff. So let me answer a quick question here. So Music Man asks, I wonder if Rick goes back to read all the crap we talk about on here. No, actually I watch throughout the entire thing. I don't have necessarily a way to like go back and read what's there. Once the stream ends, it kind of disappears and goes away. So I don't have I don't have the ability to necessarily look back. So every once in a while, you guys can see it on the stream. I'm telling you, every once in a while, I'll look and I'll start to get a smirk, or I might like get distracted or whatever. So, yeah, yeah, that's kind of the thing. And also too, it was asked, with regards to whether I was drinking or not. And you're right, buddy, I'm supposed to be, but unfortunately I ran out of time. And I kind of have nobody here to help me at the moment. So I don't have somebody who can serve me my alcohol. So I'm kind of on my own. It was either that or leave you guys hanging. So yeah, and Nana, yes, you guys do see me pause. Every once in a while I will. And occasionally you guys crack me up sometimes with the way that you're going down the road, and sometimes it'll kick me off and I'll want to do something like a tangent or a rail difference or something like that. But yeah. So so anyway, let me see here if there's anything else that I want to cover. Yeah, not really. I think we've got it. I think we've got it pretty much all over. So, also too, keep in mind that I did not have time because of the situation that is out there. Oh, I guess I'm being told that if next time, okay, so you're telling me, just Bam pointed this out, but so next time you're telling me that if I'm not quite ready at the time that I'm supposed to stream, that it's better for me to just say, hang on a second and have you guys hold and go do what I got to do and then come back? Is that what you're saying? You just guys tell me that. You guys tell me that in the chat here real quick. And yes, you guys have taken me off on the rails. You've taken me off the rails. Oh, okay. Yep, so it looks like that's the key. All right, I'll remember that next time. If I get behind, I'll remember that next time. All right, well, if that's the case, then if you guys don't mind waiting for a second while I get this out, I may actually have a pet of the week for you guys. Let's just see what I've got here. Here we go. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get these things to play. Let's see. Let's see if I can get them to play here. Oh, yep, I just might. All right, let's give me just a second here and we'll get a pet of the week going. This is a series of stuff that was submitted by 3 Chevy. So, hey, if you guys are willing to wait for a second while I get this set up. All right, let's go ahead and do this then. All right, so let's go ahead and do tonight's, wait a minute, which button is it? I forget sometimes. Yeah, there we go. All right, let's go ahead and do tonight's Bet of the Week. All right. All right. And yes, Tommy did point out that I did tell you guys yesterday that my day job was in play. Yes. So absolutely. All right. So here we go. Here's what we're going to do. So this is 3 Chevy submitted this a while ago, and I've actually been hanging on to it for a while. So there we go. So here he writes, "Hey, Whiskey, thought you and the Whiskey Warriors out there would like to see some of our sandhill cranes that live down here in Central Florida. They're quite common around here. And let's see. And as you can see, they will bring their babies along with them at a very early age." Let me shift that one. They feed on the bugs on the ground, which is why they have such a long pointed beak. Sometimes when I'm out in the yard, I will see these little holes in the ground, and I know that the birds were here. Some people feed them bread, but that is actually illegal as they are protected and bread isn't good for them. You know what? Bread's not good for ducks either. Okay? Yeah, anyway. Anyway, he says, "Thanks again for all the work you do in putting the broadcast together. I know we all appreciate it." And I thank you very much for that sentiment, of course. So let's take a look at the cranes. So here we go. Here's a little baby crane. Let's go ahead and kick this off right. So here's a little baby crane walking around. And he's got a few videos in here too. So we're going to go ahead and roll those videos in just a second, but let's go and take a look. So here they are. They're walking around. They're picking at the bugs, which I imagine in Florida, you guys definitely have a lot of bugs. And God, Jarhead 13 on Rumble is completely on a roll. He's been like dropping some serious funny bombs on us all night. I've been trying to keep from laughing, but anyway. So here they are. Again, here's another one with another little baby. That one's a real little baby. Oh my gosh. This one at least was a little older. This guy back here, he's like just, fairly hatched, like fairly soon. Fairly quickly. But anyway. All right, let's take a look at this little video here. See if it'll play. Yep, there they are. They're walking with that little baby. See, we don't get cranes. We get herons up here where we're at. And there they go. And let's take a look at this one. Let's see. So here's them feeding. Oh my gosh. Wow, they really do get down in that dirt. Holy smokes. Look at that, how far that beak is going into the ground. Holy smokes. Even the baby's like trying to get, oh, the baby's cleaning himself. So. There he is, just kind of sitting there cleaning himself. All right, last video. Let's take a look. Here's 3 of them. Are they going to break out into song? Let me just ask that. Are they going to break out into some kind of song? I mean, I almost feel like the 3 of them should get together and, start singing some barbershop quartet. Well, in this case, it'd be a trio, but yep, there they are. They're walking down the road. Woohoo! Oh. Wow, you got close to them, it seems. Jerry, or 3 Chevy, how close were you? How close were you in the videos? I gotta wait until he says what it is. But I wonder, how close did you get in some of these? You know, yeah, so that's kind of cool. Cranes, wildlife in of course, Florida. So there you go. This one actually is, oh, well, apparently Free Chevy says that you can get right up to them. You can walk right up to them. They must be really familiar with people. So, oh, he says he was maybe 4 feet away. Okay, well, that makes sense. That makes sense. I can't quite get that close to the deer or the rabbits that I have running around here on my property, but up here in the boonies. But yeah, I mean, I guess they're just familiar with people and they don't view you guys as a threat, I suppose. But anyway, all right. Well, thank you very much for sharing your Florida cranes with us. And by the way, if you would like to see your pet on the show on Wednesday night's Pet of the Week, you can do so by sending me videos, pictures, whatever, that you have available. You can send it to me via email to fans, FANS, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans at AmericanPerspective.online. Make sure you use .online, not .com, not .net, not whatever else. Oh, I guess you can raise your arms and they will flap their wings too. Well, they probably see your arms as like a mimicking of them or whatever. But anyway. All right, guys, I do appreciate that. Do me a favor. If you haven't done so already, please head on over to rumble.com. Get yourself an account if you haven't, and it's free. And make sure that you follow the American Perspective channel. And apparently, next time, if I don't have a drink, you guys will wait for me to go get one. So I'll have to remember that for next time. Do me a favor. If you are on Rumble, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. It's probably right about here in the video. And that helps to get this video onto the Rumble leaderboard, which I would love to see that. That would be just fantastic. Otherwise, we will see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening, and good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.